The iron gate stood 20 feet tall, black and gleaming under the gray London sky. Harry stared at it, his chest tight, his breath shallow. Behind that gate was something he'd been searching for his entire life. Something stolen from him before he was old enough to remember. He took one step forward. The gravel crunched under his worn shoes, then he heard it. The sharp, commanding voice that cut through the quiet morning air. "Stop right there." Harry froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. Slowly, he turned his head to the left. A man stood there, tall and rigid in a red uniform, a black bearskin hat perched high on his head. His eyes were cold. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword. A royal guard. Harry swallowed hard. He hadn't expected this. Not really. He thought maybe he could slip through unnoticed. Maybe just for a moment. Maybe just to see. But now, standing face to face with this man who looked like he belonged in a painting, Harry realized how foolish that hope had been. "This garden is private," the guard said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "You cannot enter." Harry's throat felt dry. He tried to find words, but they stuck somewhere deep inside him. He glanced past the guard, through the gaps in the iron bars. He could see it. The garden. Green and lush, with flowers blooming in soft pinks and whites. A stone bench sat beneath a willow tree. It looked peaceful. It looked like a place where someone might sit and think. A place where someone might have once sat and thought about the son they left behind. If you're feeling something right now, don't forget to subscribe. This story gets deeper than you think. "I just want to see it," Harry said quietly. His voice cracked a little. "Just for a minute." The guard didn't move, didn't blink. No exceptions. Harry clenched his fists. Anger bubbled up inside him, but it wasn't the hot, reckless kind. It was the slow, aching kind. The kind that had been building for 32 years. "My mother used to walk there," Harry said, louder now. "She used to sit on that bench. I have a photo of her there. It's the only one I have." The guard's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Just for a second. Then it was gone. "Sorry," the guard said. And this time, his voice was softer. Just barely. "But I have my orders." Harry felt the weight of those words settle over him like a heavy coat. Orders. Rules. Walls. All his life. There had been walls. Between him and the truth. Between him and the people who were supposed to love him. Between him and the place where his mother once existed, alive and whole. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking. "She died when I was 2, Harry whispered. "I don't remember her voice. I don't remember her face. All I have is that photo. And it was taken right there. Right behind that gate." The guard said nothing. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the garden. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Harry felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. But he refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of this stranger in a uniform who looked at him like he was nothing. But maybe that's what he was. Nothing. Just another man who wanted something he couldn't have. Still, he didn't move. He stood there, staring at the garden, at the bench, at the place where his mother had once been real, and the guard stood too, watching, waiting. Neither of them knew it yet. But this moment would change everything. The silence stretched between them like a rope pulled too tight. Harry could feel the guard's eyes on him, but he didn't look up. He kept his gaze fixed on the garden, on that bench, on the life he never got to live. "How long are you going to stand there?" the guard finally asked. Harry didn't answer. He didn't know. The truth was, he'd been standing at gates like this his whole life. Locked out, kept away, told he didn't belong. When he was 7, he'd asked his father why they never visited his mother's grave. His father had looked at him with tired eyes and said, "Some doors are better left closed, son." But Harry had never believed that. How could you move forward when half of you was trapped behind a locked door? He pulled the photograph from his jacket pocket. His fingers trembled as he held it. The edges were worn soft from years of touching. The colors had faded. But she was still there. His mother. Young and smiling, sitting on that very bench, her hand resting on her belly. She'd been pregnant with him when the photo was taken. 6 months along, his aunt had told him. Glowing. Happy. Alive. 3 months after he was born, she was gone. This is her, Harry said, holding up the photo. His voice was raw now, stripped of pride. This is why I'm here. The guard glanced at the photo. For a moment, his stone face softened. Just a fraction. Just enough for Harry to see that beneath the uniform there was a man. A man who maybe understood what it felt like to lose something. I'm sorry for your loss, the guard said carefully. But the rules, I know the rules, Harry interrupted. His voice was sharper than he intended. I've heard them my whole life. This isn't allowed. That isn't allowed. You can't go there. You can't ask questions. You can't dig up the past. He shoved the photo back into his pocket and looked the guard in the eye. But I'm tired of following rules that were made to keep me in the dark. The guard shifted his weight. He looked uncomfortable now. Like he wanted to say something but couldn't. What's your name? Harry asked suddenly. The guard hesitated. Thomas, he said after a moment. Thomas, Harry repeated. Do you have a mother, Thomas? The question hung in the air. Thomas's jaw tightened. I do, he said quietly. And if she died tomorrow? Harry continued. His voice steady now, and there was a place she loved. A place that held her memory, and someone told you that you couldn't go there. That you had no right to stand where she once stood. How would that feel? Thomas looked away. His hand dropped from the hilt of his sword. I'm just doing my job, he said, but the conviction was gone from his voice. I know, Harry said softly, and I'm just trying to find mine. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind rustled through the trees beyond the gate. A bird sang somewhere in the distance. The world kept moving, indifferent to the pain of two men standing at a locked gate. Then Thomas did something. Unexpected. He stepped aside. Just one step. But it was enough. Harry's breath caught in his throat. He looked at Thomas, searching his face for an explanation. I didn't see anything, Thomas said quietly, his eyes fixed straight ahead. I was watching the street. If someone happened to slip through that side gate over there for just a few minutes, I wouldn't know about it. Harry's heart raced. He looked where Thomas had nodded. There, half hidden by ivy, was a smaller gate, old, rusted at the hinges. It wasn't locked. Are you serious? Harry whispered. 5 minutes, Thomas said, his voice barely audible. That's all I can give you. After that, if you're still here, I'll have to call it in. Harry didn't wait for him to change his mind. He moved quickly, his legs almost numb with adrenaline. He pushed open the side gate. It creaked softly, a sound that seemed too loud in the quiet morning, and then he was inside. The private garden, the forbidden place. The last piece of his mother's world. His feet touched the stone path, and something inside him broke open. Not painfully, but like a dam finally giving way to water that had been held back too long. He walked slowly toward the bench. Each step felt sacred. Each breath felt stolen. When he reached it, he sat down. Right where she had sat. Right where her hand had rested on her swollen belly, feeling him move inside her. Dreaming of the life they would have together, Harry closed his eyes, and for the first time in 32 years, he felt close to her. The bench was cold beneath him, but Harry didn't care. He sat perfectly still, afraid that if he moved, the moment would shatter. Afraid he would wake up and find himself back on the other side of the gate. Locked out again. The garden was more beautiful than he'd imagined. The flowers were in full bloom, their petals soft and bright against the dark green leaves. The willow tree above him swayed gently, its branches brushing the ground like fingers reaching for something lost. This was her place. Her sanctuary. Harry pulled out the photograph again. His hands were steadier now. He held it up, lining it up with the view in front of him. The angle was almost perfect. The same bench. The same tree. The same curve of the path leading toward the fountain in the distance. She had been right here. Right where he was sitting, a tear finally escaped, sliding hot down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. "Hi, Mom," he whispered to the empty garden. His voice cracked on the word. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find you." The words felt foolish as soon as they left his mouth. She wasn't here. Not really. She was gone. Buried in a cemetery he'd visited only once, when he was 18, and finally old enough to go alone. But even there, standing at her grave, he'd felt nothing. Just cold marble and carved letters that told him nothing about who she really was. But here, he could almost feel her. In the way the light filtered through the leaves, in the scent of roses on the breeze, in the quiet peace of this hidden place. "I don't remember you," Harry said softly. "I wish I did. I wish I could remember your voice, your laugh, the way you smelled. Dad never talks about you. He says it hurts too much. My aunt tells me stories sometimes, but they're all the same. You were kind. You were beautiful. You would have been a wonderful mother." He paused, his throat tight. "But I needed more than that. I needed to know you were real, that you existed beyond the stories, beyond the photograph, and I think this is as close as I'll ever get." Sound made him turn his head. Footsteps, soft and hesitant. Thomas stood at the edge of the path, just inside the gate. He wasn't looking at Harry. He was looking at the ground, his face unreadable. "Time's almost up," Thomas said quietly. Harry nodded. He knew. He could feel it. The precious minutes slipping away like water through his fingers. "Thank you," Harry said. His voice was thick with emotion. "You didn't have to do this." Thomas finally looked at him. And in that moment, Harry saw something in the guard's eyes that surprised him. Not pity, not sympathy, but understanding. The kind of understanding that only comes from carrying your own grief. "My mother died 2 years ago," Thomas said. His voice was rough, like the words hurt to say. "Cancer. I was with her at the end, but there were so many things I never got to ask her. So many things I wish I'd said." He paused, his jaw working. "If I could have 5 more minutes with her, I'd break every rule in the book to get it." Harry felt a lump rise in his throat. He stood slowly, reluctantly, his hand trailing along the back of the bench one last time. "I hope you got to tell her the important things," Harry said. Thomas shook his head. "I don't think I did." "Not really. You never think you're running out of time until you are." They walked back toward the gate together, side by side. Harry took one last look over his shoulder. He tried to memorize every detail. The curve of the path, the color of the flowers, the way the light played through the willow branches. He wanted to carry this place with him, to hold it inside him where no one could take it away. As they reached the gate, Thomas stopped. He reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a small card. He held it out to Harry. "This is the direct line to the garden's caretaker," Thomas said. "His name is Peter. He's worked here for 40 years. He knew everyone who ever walked these paths." Harry took the card, confused. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because maybe he knew her," Thomas said simply. "And maybe he has stories that no one else ever told you." Harry stared at the card, his vision blurred with fresh tears. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Thomas replied. "Just promise me something." "What?" Thomas met his eyes, and Harry saw a depth of sadness there that mirrored his own. "When you find your answers, don't let them be the end. Let them be the beginning. Of healing, of moving forward, of living the life she would have wanted for you." Harry swallowed hard. He nodded, not trusting his voice. He stepped back through the gate, back into the world beyond the iron bars, back to reality. But something had shifted inside him. Something had loosened its grip. As he walked away, he heard Thomas's voice one last time. "She would be proud of you for coming here." Harry didn't turn around. He couldn't. But he raised his hand in acknowledgement, and he kept walking. The card felt warm in his pocket, a small piece of hope. A thread leading somewhere he hadn't known existed? Asterisk. 3 days passed before Harry found the courage to call the number on the card. He'd carried it with him everywhere, pulling it out and staring at it during quiet moments. In the morning before work, on his lunch break. Late at night when he couldn't sleep, each time he'd tell himself he'd call tomorrow. Tomorrow when he felt ready. Tomorrow when he knew what to say. But the truth was, he would never feel ready. Some conversations can't be prepared for. On Thursday evening, as rain tapped against his apartment window, Harry finally picked up his phone. His finger hovered over the numbers. His heart hammered in his chest. He dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello? The voice was elderly, warm, tinged with a slight tremor. Is this Peter? Harry asked, his mouth suddenly dry. Speaking. Who's this? Harry took a breath. My name is Harry Bennett. A guard at the private garden gave me your number. He said you might be able to help me. There was a pause on the other end. The sound of movement, like the old man was settling into a chair. Thomas gave you my number, did he? Peter said. Harry could hear the smile in his voice. That boy has a soft heart under all that uniformed starch. What can I do for you, Harry? My mother used to visit the garden, Harry said. The words came out in a rush now, tumbling over each other. Her name was Elizabeth Bennett. She died 32 years ago. I have a photograph of her sitting on the bench beneath the willow tree. I wanted to know if you remember her. If you knew her at all? The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Peter spoke and his voice had changed. It was softer now. Careful. Elizabeth Bennett, he repeated slowly. Yes, I remember her. Harry's breath caught. His legs suddenly felt weak. He sat down heavily on his couch. You do? I do, Peter confirmed. She came to the garden often in those last months before you were born. She loved that bench. Said it was the only place in the city where she could hear herself think. Harry's vision blurred. He pressed his hand against his mouth, fighting to keep his voice steady. What was she like? He whispered. Peter was quiet for a moment, as if gathering memories from some dusty corner of his mind. She was gentle, he said finally. Quiet, but not in a shy way. In a thoughtful way. She'd bring a book sometimes, but she'd never read it. She'd just sit there, one hand on her belly, watching the birds. Sometimes she'd talk to you, you know? To you, inside her. I could see her lips moving. I never heard what she said, but I always thought it must have been something beautiful. Harry couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They came in hot, silent streams down his face. She'd talk to me. All the time, Peter said gently. Like you were already here with her. Like she couldn't wait to meet you. The weight of those words settled over Harry like a blanket. For so long, he'd wondered if she'd wanted him. If she'd been happy about the pregnancy. His father never talked about it, and his aunt's stories always felt sanitized. Careful, like she was protecting him from some truth he was too fragile to hear. But this was real. This was evidence that he had been loved before he ever took his first breath. Did she ever talk to you? Harry asked. About anything? Once Peter said. Near the end, it was a warm day in July. She was sitting on that bench, and I was trimming the roses nearby. She asked me if I believed in heaven. Harry froze. What did you say? I told her I wasn't sure, but I hoped so. Because a world this beautiful had to lead somewhere even more beautiful. Peter's voice wavered slightly. She smiled at that. Said she hoped I was right. Because she wanted to watch over her baby from somewhere. Wanted to make sure he knew he was loved, even if she couldn't be there to tell him. The words hit Harry like a physical blow. He doubled over, the phone pressed to his ear, sobs finally breaking free from his chest. She knew, he choked out. She knew she was dying.
Yes,
Peter said quietly. I think she did. The doctors had told her the pregnancy was dangerous, that her heart wasn't strong enough. But she refused to end it. She said some lives are worth dying for. Harry couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The grief that had lived inside him for 3 decades came pouring out, raw and ancient and overwhelming. Peter waited. He didn't try to comfort him with empty words. He just stayed on the line, got a quiet presence in the darkness. When Harry finally found his voice again, it was barely a whisper. I never knew. No one ever told me. Perhaps they thought they were protecting you, Peter said gently. But sometimes the truth, painful as it is the only thing that can set us free. Harry wiped his face with his sleeve. His chest ached, but it was a different kind of ache now. Not the hollow, empty kind, but the kind that comes from a wound finally being cleaned. "Is there anything else you can tell me about her?" he asked. "Anything at all?" Peter hummed thoughtfully. "There is one more thing, but I'd rather show you than tell you. Can you meet me at the garden tomorrow morning?" 7 o'clock. Harry's heart leaped. "You can get me in?" "I'm the caretaker, son. I have keys to every gate." Harry didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows move across the plaster as car headlights passed on the street below. His mind raced with questions. What could Peter possibly want to show him? What else was there to know? By 6 o'clock, he gave up on sleep entirely. He showered, dressed, and made coffee he was too anxious to drink. By 6:30, he was out the door, walking through streets still gray with early morning light. The city was quiet. A few delivery trucks rumbled past. A jogger in bright yellow shoes pounded down the sidewalk. The world was waking up slowly. But Harry felt like he'd been awake forever. When he reached the garden gate, Peter was already there. He was older than Harry had imagined. Maybe 75, maybe 80. He wore a brown cardigan with patches at the elbows and held a ring of old brass keys in one gnarled hand. His face was kind, deeply lined, with eyes that had seen decades of seasons come and go. "Harry?" he asked, though he seemed to already know. "Yes, sir." Peter smiled. "No need for sir." Just Peter turned and unlocked the main gate with a heavy iron key. The lock clicked, and the gate swung open with a low creak. Harry stepped through. This time it felt different. Not stolen. Not forbidden, but invited, welcome. They walked side by side down the stone path. Peter moved slowly, but with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of this place. Every flower, every stone, every shadow. "I've been the caretaker here for 42 years, Peter said as they walked. "I've seen a lot of people come and go, dignitaries, royalty, people with important names and important problems. But your mother? She was different. She didn't come here because she was supposed to. She came because she needed to." They reached the bench beneath the willow tree. Harry's breath hitched at the sight of it. In the soft morning light, it looked almost magical, like something from a dream. "Sit," Peter said gently. Harry sat. The cold of the stone seeped through his jeans, but he didn't mind. Peter sat beside him, groaning slightly as his old bones settled. For a moment, they just sat in silence. A robin hopped across the path. The willow branches swayed. The world felt impossibly peaceful. "There's something carved into this bench," Peter said finally. "Your mother did it. I saw her one day with a small pocket knife, carefully etching into the wood. I should have stopped her. It's against the rules to deface property. But when I saw what she was carving, I couldn't bring myself to say anything." Harry's heart pounded. He looked down at the bench, scanning the wood, and then he saw it. Small letters, worn smooth by years of weather and touch, carved into the armrest. "For Harry, my brave boy, I will always be with you." The world tilted. Harry reached out with shaking fingers and traced the letters. They were shallow now, barely visible. But they were there, real, permanent. She had left him a message that had been waiting here for 32 years. "She carved this?" Harry whispered. "The week before she went into labor," Peter confirmed, "she told me she wanted to leave something behind, something that would last. She said even if you never found it, it would be here. Her love, carved into the world." Harry bent forward, his forehead resting against his hands. The sobs came again, but they were different this time. Not the sobs of grief, but of connection. Of finding something he thought was lost forever. Peter placed a weathered hand on Harry's shoulder. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, a steady presence, while Harry fell apart and put himself back together. When Harry finally sat up, his face wet with tears, he looked at Peter with red-rimmed eyes. Why didn't anyone tell me? He asked, why did they hide all of this from me? Peter sighed. I think your father was trying to protect you from the pain. Sometimes people think if they don't talk about the loss, it will hurt less. But grief doesn't work that way. It lives inside us whether we speak of it or not. And secrets, they have a way of growing heavier with time. I've spent my whole life feeling like part of me was missing, Harry said quietly. Like there was this hole inside me that nothing could fill. And now? Peter asked gently. Harry looked down at the carved words, at his mother's message, at the proof that he had been loved fiercely, completely, even before he was born. Now, he said slowly, I think I understand. The hole isn't from her being gone. It's from not knowing she was there at all. Peter nodded. You know now. She was there. She loved you. She made the hardest choice a mother can make, and she left you this, so that one day when you were ready you would know. They sat for a long time watching the morning light strengthen and spread across the garden. Watching the flowers open their petals, watching the world wake up. Eventually Peter stood with a grunt. I need to start my morning rounds. But you're welcome to stay as long as you like. This place belongs to you as much as anyone now. Harry looked up at him. Thank you, Peter, for everything. The old man smiled. Your mother would have wanted you to have this. I'm just glad I got to be the one to give it to you. He walked away slowly, disappearing around a bend in the path, and Harry sat alone on his mother's bench, his fingers tracing her words, feeling closer to her than he ever had before. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel locked out. He felt like he'd finally come home. Harry stayed in the garden until almost noon. He sat on the bench, walked the paths his mother had walked, touched the flowers she might have touched. He took pictures, but not many. Some moments were too sacred to be captured. Some moments needed to be felt, not preserved. When he finally left, the world looked different. The streets were the same. The buildings were the same, but something inside him had shifted. A weight he'd carried for so long had lifted, replaced by something lighter. Not happiness exactly, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from finally knowing the truth. He went home and pulled out the old photo of his mother. He looked at it differently now, not as a relic of someone lost, but as a moment frozen in time, a moment of love, a moment of hope, a moment of a mother looking toward a future she knew she wouldn't see, but choosing it anyway. That evening, Harry did something he hadn't done in years. He called his father. The phone rang 4 times. Then his father's gruff voice answered, Harry, everything okay? They only called each other on birthdays and holidays. A random Thursday evening call was unusual. Hey, Dad, everything's okay. Harry paused, choosing his words carefully. I went to the garden today. The one where Mom used to go. Silence on the other end was heavy. Harry could hear his father's breathing, slow and measured. How did you? His father started, then stopped. A guard let me in, and I met the caretaker. Peter. He remembered her. Another long silence. I see, his father said finally. His voice was tight. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me? About the choice she made. About knowing the pregnancy was dangerous. Harry heard his father let out a long, shaky breath. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion Harry had never heard from him before. Because I was angry, his father admitted. I was angry at her for leaving me. For leaving us. I begged her to listen to the doctors. I told her we could try again later, but she wouldn't. She said you were already here. Already real? Already loved, his father's voice cracked. And then she was gone. And I had you. This tiny, perfect baby who looked just like her. And every time I looked at you, I saw her, and it hurt too much. So I stopped talking about her. I stopped visiting the places she loved. I tried to move forward, but I never did. I just stayed stuck. Harry felt tears rolling down his face again. But this time, they were for his father. For the man who'd spent 32 years carrying his own grief, silent and alone. She left me a message, Harry said softly, carved into the bench. She said she'd always be with me. His father made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. That sounds like her. Always leaving little pieces of herself behind. Little reminders that she'd been there. "I'm not angry at her, Dad," Harry said. "And I'm not angry at you either. I just wish we'd talked about this sooner. I think we both needed to." "I know," his father whispered. "I know we did. I just didn't know how to start." "We can start now," Harry offered. "If you want." There was a pause. Then his father said, "I'd like that." They talked for 2 hours. His father told him stories Harry had never heard, about how they met at a library, how she laughed at terrible jokes, how she sang off-key in the shower, how she used to make wishes on dandelions and believed they'd come true. She wasn't perfect. She was human, flawed and real and wonderful. And as Harry listened, she became more than a photograph, more than a name on a headstone. She became a person. His mother, fully formed in his mind for the first time, when they finally hung up, Harry felt lighter than he had in years. The hole inside him wasn't completely filled. Maybe it never would be. But it was no longer empty. It was filled with stories, with truth, with love that had always been there, just waiting to be found. The next morning, Harry woke early. He packed a small bag with a thermos of coffee, a book, and a blanket. He returned to the garden. Peter was there as Harry somehow knew he would be. "Back again?" Peter said with a knowing smile. "I thought I might come here sometimes," Harry said. "If that's okay? Maybe on Sunday mornings. Just to sit, to read. To think? I think that's more than okay," Peter replied. "I think that's exactly what this place is for." So Harry began a new ritual. Every Sunday morning he came to the garden. He sat on his mother's bench. He traced her carved words with his fingers. He read books and drank coffee and watched the seasons change. Sometimes his father joined him. They'd sit together in comfortable silence, both connected to the woman they'd loved and lost. Sometimes Thomas, the guard, would stop by on his break. They'd become unlikely friends, bonded by loss and the understanding that sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to heal. And sometimes Harry sat alone. But he never felt lonely, because in that garden, surrounded by flowers and birdsong and the whisper of willow branches, he felt his mother's presence, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a part of him, living on in the choices he made, in the love he carried, in the courage it took to search for truth, even when it hurt. One Sunday, almost a year after his first visit, Harry brought his own pocket knife. He sat on the bench and carefully, reverently, he carved his own message into the wood below his mother's words. "I found you. Mom, thank you for waiting." He sat back and looked at the two messages, one above the other. A conversation across time, a connection that death couldn't break. The morning sun broke through the willow branches, warm on his face. And Harry smiled, because he'd finally found what he'd been searching for his whole life. Not answers to every question, not an end to the grief, but something better. He'd found proof that he had been loved, that he still was. That love, once carved into the world, never truly fades. It just waits, patient and eternal, ready to be discovered by those brave enough to look. And in that garden, on that bench, beneath that ancient willow tree, Harry had looked, and he had found home.